And why do you think it is that is it just because of your citizenship, or do you think that there was any other reasons that Russia thought that this is somebody that we want to grant asylum to? This is a case that we consider worthy.
Yeah, this is where we get a little bit deeper into it, because there's a couple of theories as to why the FBI defer. The reason the FBI is still chasing me, first of all, is not the reasons I'm about to discuss. They're still chasing me because they would have to cover up what they did. And if it comes out, this is going to be a major issue, just like even if it was with Larry Nassar, where they covered it up for a year. And now the U.S. Women's Olympic Team had they had congressional testimony, and the FBI is being sued for $1 billion. So this is a major liability to them. That's why they want to cover it up now. Now, as far as theories as why they did this, the first one that most people assume is, oh, it's just some kind of clerical error, right? Well, first of all, these are not errors. As you go through my court documents, it's absolutely clear to anybody who goes through the court documents that these were not a series of clerical errors. This was 100% intentional. There is zero doubt in anyone's mind who's looked at the documents that this was done to me intentional. So the next step is, if this is intentional, why would they want to do this? So the next theory is that the FBI agent who was on this from the very beginning, and I don't have proof of this next portion I'm going to tell you about, but he used to be either the head or a member of the Maryland Counterterrorism Task Force. And I can't find any record of this anymore, but I did find a record. He does have address records still in Maryland you can still find online. And so somehow he went from being either on or the head of the Maryland Task Force to being posted in Erie. Erie's a post-industrial city. It's lost like 30 or 40% of its population. Nobody moves to Erie unless you're from there or you have a good job or something. Nobody's like, I have a successful job. Post me in Erie to a podunk office of the Pittsburgh office, because he's not even in the Pittsburgh office. He's in a branch office. So how did this guy who's not from Erie end up in Erie? My theory is he got demoted. Something happened and they put him in a corner office, right? Can't prove it. I'd love for somebody to dig at that. And if that's the case, FBI agents very often, in fact, it happened after 9/11 a lot, they hired a lot of people and people wanted to be successful. And instead of finding an actual terrorist, they can invent them, which is what they did with the Newburgh Four. They framed 4 guys. And the judge said they framed them. They said the FBI completely framed these guys. So it could be that he's like, well, this is an easy target. I'll just lie a little bit and I'll see this big kidnapper. Because when they caught me in Bulgaria, you would have thought they caught Osama bin Laden's cousin. The Bulgarians called me the American Taliban because of the way the Americans framed me in the newspapers, both in Bulgaria and the United States. I was in Reuters. I was in Associated Press. I was headline news around the world. It was huge. Bulgaria caught this huge international kidnapper. They never mentioned it was my son in the headlines. That was always like, line 10 or something. And so it could be that he just wanted to resuscitate his career and he thought this is an easy target. That's one theory. The problem with that theory, and that is possible. I do not rule that theory out whatsoever. Okay, I do rule out the accidental theory. That's just not possible. So it is possible that that's all it is. The problem is, how has he gotten through 3 extraditions? How has he had U.S. embassies in 4 countries? I mean, the amount of resources they put in to try and capture me is significant. They've tried to extradite me more times than Snowden, which is insane. This is beyond the ability of a single agent to do this, which means that there are more people involved in this. There are more people. I have documents that people signed off in the Department of Justice, Department of State. There were people in the U.S. Embassy in Bulgaria, there are people in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, people in the U.S. Embassy in Nicosia, Cyprus, people in the U.S. Embassy in Barbados. This is too big for one FBI agent to be able to do it himself, especially an FBI agent that is in a branch office in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Well, especially one, as you said, if your theory holds, one that had been discredited. He certainly, if he was just trying to salvage his career, I'm sure there wouldn't be a lot of people all around this vast network willing to stick their necks out for him. So what other ulterior motive could there be?
Okay, and this is where it gets a little bit crazy. And I know we're very short on time. So normally whenever I discuss this, I lay all the foundations out for this. So all this court record stuff, everything except for the fact that he may have been demoted, which I clearly said I don't have proof of, but I do know he was at a higher level at one point. But I have court records to prove everything else I've said, okay, including the attempted kidnapping and so forth. But when I first moved to Russia in early 2001, I moved to Russia prior to 9/11. And I married a Russian citizen whose family, I'm trying to think how to put this politely without involving too much. Basically, they worked with military secrets, engineering stuff on the military planes. So they had firsthand knowledge of the Russian military aircraft, things that the U.S. was very interested in. And we lived in the same house. And so the working theory is, has been proposed to me many times, and there is some more evidence along this line too, is that they wanted to get me to try and see if I could steal those secrets. Now, on its own, I get it. It just sounds crazy. It just comes out of nowhere. But there were several things behind this. One is after 9/11, they turbocharged all the intelligence agencies, and not everybody they hired were very smart people. And in fact, Edward Snowden talked about one of the things that turned him was the CIA in Switzerland. They framed basically they framed a Swiss banker to get information out of him, visited him in jail and said, we'll get you out if you give us this financial information on these Americans. And he did. He became a CIA asset. So they put people in prison all the time to try and get them to do what they want. When I started coming back to the US 2002, 2003, I started having very serious incidents with the TSA. I was on the FSB watch list, by the way. So the FSB, also known as the former KGB, I was on their watch list. They told me I was on their watch list. And it was because of my wife's family. They always said, listen, you didn't do anything wrong. We're just watching you. And this is normal. I have a friend that lived in DC and he married a Russian national and he worked for one of the defense firms or something. I forget that, CIA, NSA, something. He had a low-level job, but he had security clearance. And the FBI watched his wife. That's normal. So I was on the Russians' watch list back in 2001, 2002, the whole time I lived here. Sometimes they stopped me. Sometimes they asked me questions. They never interrogated me. I never had any problems. It was always pretty much like, where are you going? What are you doing? And I'd be like, I know I'm on your watch list. And be like, okay, we're not going to bother you. Don't do anything wrong. You got no problems. And then when we go to the U.S. embassies, we noticed that they had a lot of information about my wife that we never gave them. They had very large, almost a dossier on my wife. And then in 2002, the U.S. embassy had our house in Cyprus swatted. They called the federal police and told them we were drug dealers and then swatted our house. And that was all linked back to the U.S. embassy. And then I worked for Microsoft as well. I had a territory of 85 countries. I worked for Microsoft, Middle East, and Africa. And on a regular basis, it was a senior position. I was also a Microsoft regional director. I met with the top level government ministers in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, all throughout the Middle East and Africa. I spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Jordan, not Syria, but Lebanon, Turkey, Cyprus, the whole areas. I've met with cabinet level members of those countries on behalf of Microsoft. And the intelligence agencies, instead of when they're trying to recruit assets, they can either get an asset and build a cover, or they can find somebody with a cover and recruit them. You can read Legacy of Ashes, which is a very reputable book about how they recruit CIA agents. So I had a very reputable cover. Microsoft gets you in just about anywhere. The few times I was denied, I made a phone call, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would make a phone call and get me in. The Saudi Arabia royal family snuck me into the country one time and altered my visa with acid to get me into the country retroactively. Another time, they had to call the ambassador, and the ambassador had to apologize to me for denying me entrance into the country as Microsoft. So I was in and out with these people all the time. And there were 3 recruitment attempts from intelligence agencies that they tried to recruit me. It was very clear. These were not, I mean, I had other attempts that I don't know if they were intelligence agencies or not, but these 3 were very clear who they were. And so they were all close allies of the US. And so it all basically points back to the fact of the good possibility of they were trying to recruit me. And after I kept turning them down, that their thing was, well, we know he's got a custody issue. Let's make a mess of it. And I'm not saying the FBI knew what was happening. I don't think they went to the FBI and were like, do this. But what they did is they snowplowed the way, and then they found somebody who was not too bright, and they put him down this path, and they just kept clearing the path out of the way for him and nudging it at the higher levels. Can I prove it? No. But it's certainly more plausible than this guy was trying to rebuild his career, because the number of resources that have been put in to try and get me is just insane. And they don't leave receipts with you when they try and recruit you, so I can't prove that. But I can prove I lived in Russia. I can prove I traveled to all these places. I can prove I met with government ministers. I met with cabinet level members all the time in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. That was not unusual in my job.
That's crazy. So before all this, you were someone high level at Microsoft, someone who essentially had the travel privileges. It sounds like your travel privileges even exceeded that of someone with diplomatic immunity in some of these cases. You had an extreme level of access. And I mean, it sounds like someone who would be very, very ripe for recruiting as a potential intelligence asset, especially when you have links to, potential Russian secrets. So that makes a lot of sense. And what you're saying is that the CIA may have used this FBI agent, someone who was not doing well in his career, as maybe a cat's paw, unwittingly, in order to pursue a case that they could use as leverage against you as a recruitment method.
That's the working theory. Again, I can't prove it, but it's the simplest explanation beyond he just did this, because he can't do it on his own. And there's nothing else in my history or past. In fact, when I first started talking to journalists, I said no, because I'm just like, this is just this agent, because I couldn't take that next step. But every journalist I was talking to, after I go through my documents, are like, you have something in your past. Somebody in the intelligence agency wanted for something. And I started recounting these intelligence agency recruitments and the file on my wife and the 2002 SWAT and other stuff. And the journalist was like, dude, this is it. And I just kept having the same conversation with journalists over and over. And I finally, especially this year, because we uncovered even more documents this year from emails from the FBI to my lawyers as far back as 2007. Because the thing is, basically, when I didn't send them back that first summer because we didn't know where she was, first of all, and we had conflicting court orders at that time, right? So we wanted her to go back to Tennessee, but she wouldn't go back because she had an arrest warrant. The FBI was already involved within 3 or 4 weeks, and that is so unusual for the FBI to be involved within 3 or 4 weeks. They were sitting there waiting for that to happen. So I have to wonder, even were they involved back in the 2006 things? I don't know. But now that we've uncovered they were involved within weeks of 2007, that's a possibility as well. But for them to be that involved that early, the FBI was sitting there waiting on this to happen. And they also coached my ex-wife through every bit. They coached her. In fact, the Tennessee revoked my ex-wife's passport because she owes me like $40,000 in child support till he's 18. They revoked her driver's license. The FBI not only got her passport back, but while I was in Bulgaria, after they failed to kidnap my son, they paid for her flight and hotel to fly down to St. Kitts and go to court in St. Kitts. And she lost in St. Kitts as well. And as soon as she lost in St. Kitts, instead of spending additional time with her son, who she said was kidnapped, she disappeared back off to the US. And until he was 26 years old, they continued to list him as missing, kidnapped, whereabouts unknown, despite the fact that his mother visited him in St. Kitts in 2009. He called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and said, remove me, I'm an adult. They said, no, we cannot remove you without a court order. The only way I got her removed is at age 26, which was in 2022. I made a viral TikTok, which hit 1 million views in one day. I tagged the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They blocked me on TikTok and removed his poster within 24 hours. And they previously said only a court order could do that. And I have all the legal correspondence between us and Nick Mick all the way back to 2009 as well.
This is a very, very strange story, and it sets off a lot of alarm bells. I do want to ask what's next, and quite honestly, whether you're in fear for your life, especially being so public about this information. We're going to have to take a super quick break, though, folks. You're not going to want to miss the rest of this conversation. Sit tight. We'll be back in 2. Welcome back to Nights with Chris Boyle. Joining us once again is Chad Howard. Chad is a fugitive from the FBI, from Interpol, and he was joining us before the break talking to us about some very scary potential reasons, his theories as to why this is, potentially involving recruitment by the CIA as an intelligence asset. Chad, I have to ask, do you think that being public about this information puts you in any potential danger? And also, what's next for you?
Well, I don't think it puts me in any danger because I'm right here in their face. If anything, they don't want anything to happen. They want to pretend like this never existed. I did want to say one more thing about this, though. Another reason I got this is that I told you this is almost impossible to get. I'm the next American man after Edward Snowden to get this. And that's because I was denied at the local level. When it went federal, the FSB ran a background check on me, and they know I used to be on their watch list. And I think they know even more about my case than I do because someone at the federal level stepped in and approved my asylum on an appeal. And there were 6 senior people that signed off on it. So that further pushes my theory of the intelligence connection. Now, as far as what's next, we've done everything we can through the court systems. We have exhausted all the proper methods. I've offered to go to trial if they will go to trial within the stipulated time. They refuse to do it. So we need publicity because they're painting what they do is they do crazy things to me. And then they're like, he's just a crazy man going off. But even I have records of this stuff. If I told you they tried to kidnap my son, you'd be like, you're crazy. The FBI would never do that. But I have documentation. I have legal documentation of it and witnesses. So if I can prove all those things, then the things that I can't prove shouldn't be a big leap. And that's my point. But they continue to paint me as this crazy person despite me having evidence of almost everything I've said. And the only things I don't have pure evidence of are the connections to the espionage. But all the legal aspects, the kidnappings, the extraditions, I have all the legal documentation records of that, court records.
That's really fascinating. And then
we need somebody to really pick this up and run with it.
I have to ask, do you have any question? Do you have anything to say to any U.S. lawmakers out there, or anyone who might be able to make action on your case?
Yeah, they're chicken. We contacted Senator Mike Kelly, who's a huge MAGA head, who I thought would pick up this case. We signed an authorization for him to contact the FBI. You know what Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania did? He sent me a letter back that said, I've confirmed you're wanted by the FBI. If you need anything else, call my office. They're useless. I contacted Senator Marsha Blackburn, who I used to know because I ran for Republican office in the state of Tennessee in the year 2000 before I left the United States. And I know her a little bit personally. I used to have her personal cell phone, which has changed since then. I contacted her office, and her aide said, yes, we contacted her. She remembers you send on your information. And then all she did was add me to her campaign list. If they're looking to go after the FBI, here's the thing that really gets me, okay? Especially about your type of audience. Everybody in your audience is so mad at the FBI, right? And then I come at you with a true story, no tinfoil whatsoever, purely provable, and people are like, he's crazy. I have the FBI story. If you want to go after the FBI, I have the story sitting right here for you and can provide you with thousands of pages of documents.
Well, Chad, I'm glad you were able to join us tonight to talk about this. Hopefully this gets some attention out. Hopefully some lawmakers, they're on this program all the time. Maybe they even watch my show. Hopefully some of them will pay attention to this case. It's a very disturbing, very intriguing case. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about it. Really quick, tell folks at home where they can learn more about what's going on with your situation.
You can go to alexisnotmissing.com. Now, the website is several months out of date. It does not include me getting to Russia, me getting to Cuba. The website is a mess and it's out of date. But if you go to the website, it'll link you to podcasts, and you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. And my YouTube channel is very small, but you can find me there. And that's what I reiterate. This is almost never issued to Americans. And the reason it was is, again, I think it backs up the intelligence agency link theory.
Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have for you this evening. Until next time, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HeyChrisBoyle. If you like the show, please send feedback to chris.boyle@onn.com. I'd like to thank my production team, my director Jared, my editor Raphael, associate producer Riley, PA Brittany, and all of you at home. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your night.